Hey guys, welcome back. This week I have been getting ready to be an artist at the Silicon Valley Comic-Con. As I've been getting ready, I was thinking back to when I first started selling my art at comic conventions. The more I thought about it, I realized I've really grown a lot and I've picked up quite a few tips and tricks that I think would have been really helpful for when I was first starting out. So I thought this would be a really great video to make for you guys if you are thinking about being an artist at an artist alley sometime soon. Here are my top 5 tips and tricks for your first artist alley. My first tip is to practice your table display. Now I'm going to assume that you already know what you're going to be selling. There's lots of different things you can sell if you're an artist. If you're a 2D artist like me, you can do prints, you can sell originals, as well as your art on all sorts of different merchandise like buttons and stickers. So once you know what you're going to be selling, you really want to have a good idea of how it's going to be displayed. Now, a lot of people will use grid storage cubes. I'll insert an image right here of what I'm talking about. I use these. If you're just starting out, I wouldn't worry too much about investing in a display, especially if you're not really sure what you want to keep and what you want to be selling on a regular basis. That might be something that you test out this first time and invest in for the next show. One thing I do want to say, this is a mistake that I made at the very beginning and I still struggle with a little bit, is I went a little overboard with how many products I had and how much merchandise and prints and just plastered them all over. I had wire cubes and the prints across, and I had some other things in front of that and lots of buttons everywhere, and I felt like it really cluttered my table. You might be worried about not having enough things to be on your table, but if you have too much, it's just a cluttered chaos, and a lot of potential customers might walk away just because they don't even know what to look at. And my last tip for practicing your display is to understand what your pricing is and display that pretty prominently. Now, you're still going to get asked on pretty much every item how much something costs. I think some customers either don't see the signage or they think maybe you'll say a different number that's lower, but be prepared to answer the question, how much is this, all the time. But it does help to have prices that are really clearly marked. I like to have them on each individual item, or at least in between a lot of my prints and things like that, so people know how much you're selling your items for and if they're even willing to part with that kind of money. So tip number 2 is to bring the essentials. So what I mean with bringing the essentials is bringing things that you might not realize you need until you don't have them. So things like this could be scissors or tape or clothespins or safety pins. Tablecloth can be really helpful. A lot of conventions won't have anything to cover your table, and so just a really inexpensive tablecloth can really go a long way. And having little bits and pieces to make sure all of your display is together, and any emergencies you might have that can be fixed with tape, you have tape. Something else you really want to have is a cash box or change box. People will need change, and so you want to make sure you have that and not turn away customers because they have a bill that's too big. In the same vein with money, you might want to have a Square reader or some other credit card reading device. I use Square, but I know that there's, I believe, a PayPal one and maybe some other ones. If you can, that is really helpful because some people only have credit cards now, and if you can't take that payment, you'll lose a sale. Something else that's really important is to bring food and snacks. And at the very least, look into what food is around the convention center or maybe at the convention center and making sure that you have food throughout the day. This is something that is really easy to overlook and forget that you're there for a really long time, usually 8 or 9 hours a day, and you're gonna need to eat something, and you wanna make sure that there's food available. I like to bring my own food and have my own drinks and things like that. It makes it really helpful, so you don't need to leave your booth. In relation to leaving your booth, I suggest, especially for your first conventions, bring a friend. A lot of conventions will give you an extra seat, an extra pass for someone to come there with you, and that not only helps for setup and tear down to have an extra pair of hands, but having someone at the table so that you can go to the bathroom. Something else you're going to want to have is some sort of business card or business information. Now, this could be something as simple as a piece of paper with your information on it. If you don't have a website but have social media, a Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, something like that, or even just an email so that potential customers that may have spent all their money or just want to follow you on social media and support you that way have a way of getting in touch with you. Last but not least, with bringing your essentials is bring something to do. So like I mentioned, conventions have really long hours, and sometimes there's a lot of dead time because people are in some sort of panel or doing a costume contest or something, and there's just not a lot of people around. So I suggest bring your sketchbook and some watercolors or whatever art medium you like to use and draw. The great thing about this is if people are walking by, a lot of the time you get their attention by drawing or doing some sort of arty thing that they want to come and look at, and they're interested in your process. My only precaution with that is that you don't ignore people walking by your table. If you are really disengaged, they may not want to even buy anything just because they don't feel a connection to you, or might feel like you're hiding away and not engaging and not willing to answer questions or want to even sell anything. So be really careful, especially about being on your phone. The whole point is for you to be there and to show your art off and to engage with people, which that is tip number 3. Engage with potential customers. Now, I'm an introvert, and I get it. It's not great talking to people sometimes, but this is really important for a business, and being able to talk about your art and what you do can really help you grow your business and grow as an artist. I feel like a lot of people that go to conventions as attendees tend to be introverted or at least shy to begin with already. So something I like to think about as people are walking by and might be potentially interested in what I'm selling is I just say a friendly hello, and if they linger for just a little longer, maybe 45 seconds or so, I'll make sure that they know that I'm available by telling them, hey, let me know if you have any questions. Something I really like to do is be on the lookout for really great cosplaying, or even just a cool nerdy t-shirt that is from a fandom that I really like. So if I see someone walking by, even if they're not looking at my table, but I know that they're in earshot, sometimes I'll let them know that I really like their cosplay or what they're wearing, or even an art piece that they're holding that I really like. If it's from something that I recognize and really enjoy, I want them to know that I also like that. And people tend to do well with being given compliments, and sometimes that will get their attention to look at some of the stuff I have. Especially if there's a similar fandom that's related to what they're wearing. They might not have seen it before, but now that I've engaged them, they can come and look at the stuff I have. And if not, they can keep walking and take the compliment, and it's no big deal. I don't want to yell at people across the hall, or especially if they're at a different artist table. I just really find that rude, and I wouldn't like that if that happened to me. So I like to wait to see if they're looking at my art. Some people will glance and keep walking, and that's fine, but sometimes people will stop and glance at something, and something catches their eye at my table. And if they're close enough to hear me, I will say hello, and sometimes I'll ask what they're looking at, and if they're interested in a particular fandom that I can tell they're looking at, I might point out something else that I also have and get them to come in and look at the rest of my table. My number 4 tip is to network with other artists. Don't be afraid to talk to other artists that are there. A lot of them have been doing it for a little while and you might be intimidated, but saying hello and maybe even buying something from them and talking to them about their experience can be really helpful. The Artist Alley community can be really tight-knit, and a lot of them all talk to each other and go to the same kinds of shows. You can pick up a lot of information about local conventions or conventions that are worth going to that you hadn't heard of before, and you might see these artists at multiple events, and so it's good to be nice and respectful of the artists that are there. Another thing is it can be really great to get useful feedback. Don't be afraid to tell an artist that this is your first time vending somewhere and you might want some pointers. As long as you can take that as really helpful criticism or critique, then you can only improve from there. You can also take note of what the other artists are doing. Maybe you see a display that you realize would work really well for you next time. Make sure to collect business cards from other people and maybe exchange information. A lot of artists are really friendly and open to hearing from you and maybe even helping you out. So a bonus tip for engaging in the Artist Alley community and with other artists is to join some sort of Facebook group or other networking group of artists that do artist alleys. One that I suggest is the Artist Alley Network International. You can search for this. This is a huge group and they are amazingly talented artists that share their work and share tips and tricks, and you can get a little view into the behind the scenes of where people might get certain items made and how much things cost, and just a place that you can get your questions answered. It's really important with any Facebook group or any group in general that you join online that you check out their pinned post and make sure that you understand the rules for posting. A lot of groups don't like it if you just go in and post all of your social media links and things like that, and they have some rules and guidelines to make sure that all of the group gets a fair share of notice from their posts. And number 5, my 5th tip is to not get discouraged. This is a really big step for you to go into an artist alley and sell your art for maybe the very first time. And you might have some expectations about how much money you might make or not, or what that means and what that means for you as an artist or how talented you are. And I want you to understand that everybody starts somewhere. The best thing you can do is to just start. I also want to mention that some conventions are just slower. You might talk to some of the other artists and they weren't doing very well either, and it's not that your art isn't good or people don't want it, it just maybe was an off year or is a convention's first year. It doesn't matter as long as you get the experience. You might go in and have all these expectations and realize, wow, there's a lot I need to change, or I need to improve a little bit in this area or this form of art that I do, and that's great. Do that. Don't get discouraged and stop. You need to take that experience and turn it into a more positive experience next time. The best thing too is once you've done your first one, that experience is over. It might be scary each time going into a new artist alley or a convention or whatever event you're selling at, but as long as you've done it the first time, you know how to improve at least a little bit. Take notes. No matter what, use this experience to benefit you and to only improve. Everyone is just trying to improve in what they do, and everybody starts somewhere. So don't get discouraged, and I hope you have a great first artist alley. All right, those are my 5 tips for your first artist alley. I hope they were really helpful. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give me a like or comment below and subscribe if you want to see more. I am a full-time artist and illustrator, and I make art videos every single week, and I would love to hear from you and for you to join us here in this little art community. I hope you have a creatively fulfilled day, and I will see you next time.